Welcome back, comic book fans. It's Rusty again with Collector Auctions, and thank you for joining me today for a special episode. Today, we finish up my visit to the Clandestine Comic Book Show that I recently went to. I had to break these episodes down into two different episodes because when I had finished filming originally, it was going to be well over an hour, a super long show, and there's no way I was going to put that out there. So I decided to break up the video into two different episodes, this being the second part. So guys, definitely go back and watch my previous episode where I actually show you the show. You get to see a lot of the great comic books that were at the show, and you get to see the comic book haul from the first dealer that I bought books from. So definitely check that out. But today, what we're going to do is wrap it up, and we will see the books that I picked up from the second two dealers, and we'll wrap up everything at that point. So definitely sit back and enjoy the rest of this episode. But before we do that, definitely hit that like, slap the subscribe, and click on that notification bell so you guys don't miss out on any of the episodes that I put out each and every week, Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 3 p.m. All right, guys, enjoy the second part of the episode, and then I'll come back for a wrap-up. All right, guys, I'm back. The second dealer of the day is actually the very first one that I went to. And as I said earlier, there were some other dealers that I wanted to go to first, but they were super popular and the room's very small and I couldn't get to them. And as I made my way around the first corner, there was this dealer that I've bought some books from before. I've seen his collection. I've bought some Marvel Age books that have been super high grade. If I remember him before, he was working on a high-grade run of the entire Marvel Age run. So he had tons of duplicates. So I picked up some from him at a previous show. He was also a dealer that had some beautiful Wolverine limited series books that I almost pulled the trigger on. But they had, especially issues 3 and 2, had just the slightest, the micro color-breaking tick. It took a lot of looking at that book to really see that defect. And especially in this room that I was looking at, I couldn't find the defects easily in that light. But when I could, I decided to pass on those books. Now, I've bought from him before, as I said, but I stopped off his dealer, and I don't know his name, but he keeps all of his books that he brings in Mylar, and it makes everything look so much better. And he has an eclectic collection of different books every show. It won't be the same old things, and that's kind of going back to all the dealers that I'm talking about. These regulars are in there. Some of the ones that I see at every show, it's the same books. It's the same books I put on the wall, waiting for somebody to overspend on them. And there might be some change. There's obviously some change here and there, but it feels like it's the same old thing. With this dealer, there are a few things that may be the same, but he always has a very small setup, a very nice display wall, and it's always interesting. You don't know what you're going to find. And what did I say at the very beginning of the day was I was an open book. And today I took advantage of it without having too much worry. That was my feeling of the show. Is like a lot of times I'll go and I won't find anything. And if I don't find anything quick, I kind of settle for things. That was the last show. I kind of settled, good books, but I kind of settled on a few things. This show, when I got to this dealer and I'm looking, I was like, wow, these conditions are really good, and the prices that he's asking are really good. And he's usually pretty good. If you bundle, he'll knock the price down a little bit, and that's what we did here as well. So let me show you what I picked up, because this kind of goes into all the different themes that we were talking about at the beginning of the show. This guy actually hit on a bunch of those for the most part. So let me see. Sorry, I've got these out of order right here. But let's start with the first one. This is a book that I continue picking up if I can find it in high grade. It is not super valuable as a 9.8 blue label. New Mutants, number 18, the first appearance of the Demon Bear, the first issue with Bill Sienkiewicz coming on to work with Chris Claremont, changed the trajectory of, I can almost say that word, by the way, of New Mutants at the time. It was a fine book. It was illustrated very good. But this changed it. This was a game changer in art style and everything like this. And this was the first issue with Sienkiewicz on there. Well, this is a book that I would not get this graded at this point. It's actually surprising that a 9.8 on this is only $80 to $105. 9.6 has actually dropped down. It's even worse, $38 to $65. But this is where I said the themes kind of cross over. This is a book that I would want to get signed by Chris Claremont and eventually Bill Sienkiewicz. And that's what I kind of looked up. I looked up 9/8 on this. Again, a candidate. And I'm surprised that the book, if you can find it at these prices, I probably would just buy it rather than go through the trouble of having to go to shows or send in or anything. But 9.8 signed by both creators, 116, that was a really low price, up to 191. That's not a big value book, but this is a book that I would want for the PC, signed by both creators, graded, to be quite honest. So that kind of got me started. Normally, I would not just pick this book up, even though it's a very good first appearance by Warlock. From what time? When did this book come out anyway? August of 1984. I love this book. I grew up with this book, these books, this whole New Mutants line. I had all the books except for the first graphic novel that introduced the New Mutants. But I love the Bill Sienkiewicz artwork. I've spoken about his art. When he came on the New Mutants, he really upped his game on the abstract after leaving Moon Knight and coming over to New Mutants. It really changed the game, and he was very influential to me back in college. I took a lot of inspiration from his kind of, I don't even know what you would call it. The type of artwork he was doing was so abstract and loose and everything, and I loved that. Well, again, this is a book for the PC, but I wouldn't normally just pick this book up, and that's the first book I'm going to pick up at the show. It was a bunch of books. It was the accumulation of the books that this dealer had that I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and get this as well. I kind of bundled a lot of this stuff together. So let us get through some of the other ones here. Another book that I wanted to get signed when I saw this was Spider-Gwen, Gwenverse number 4. It's one of the variants by Greg Land. And this is all about the Greg Land cover right here. And this is one of the favorites. I think there's 4 different ones of Gwen as different Marvel characters where she's in the Spider-Man suit. And that's the one that I liked the most. And this is a book that I will definitely take to the next show that Greg Land is at to get signed. Now, I don't care about getting this book graded, but we look, as I said earlier, through the lens of 9.8s, getting them graded, lens of CGC. Let me give you some values on this. 9.8 Blue Label, $75 down to $45. Not worth getting graded. But $207 recent sale with a Greg Land autograph on this book. So this is a book that I don't know if I would ever get this graded, to be quite honest, but the potential to add value is going to be there. And it's a book that I will definitely get Greg Land to sign at the next show that I see him at. And I think he's going to be at Heroes, and he may be in Baltimore. I'm not sure yet. All right. Next up was a book. I continue picking this book up. In fact, I've got a copy of it signed. I don't have it graded, but I love this book. Grew up with this book. I had this in my original PC, Micronauts number 8. I had that first 10 or 12 issues of Micronauts. I had them all. In fact, I still have some of my Micronaut toys somewhere stored away. This issue right here introduces Captain Universe, and you've got this Michael Golden artwork. Fantastic stuff right here. And I've gotten him to sign a copy of this, but this is, I think, even a better copy. And 9.8's on an unsigned Blue Label, all the way down from $70 to $45. I'm a little shocked about that, to be quite honest, for a 9.8 from a book. Actually, I'm looking at the wrong notes, so let's reset that. August of 1979. 9.8 is actually $81 up to $150. 9.6 is 73 down to about $25. Not as good on the 9.6. But if you get this signed by Michael Golden, and the prices, there's a couple of artists on this, but getting Michael Golden to sign this book as a 9.8, recent sale, $350. 9.6 is all the way down to, I'm looking at the price, and it says $375, and I got a note there, it says 2021. And honestly, I need to discredit that because that was right during the boom, and prices were definitely obscured at that point. So I can't really count that $375 from 2021. But the $350, that's a recent sale for a 9.8. That's definitely on the table. And this book right here will be going with me to the next con to have Michael Golden sign. I know I will see him at one of the 2 cons I mentioned before. All right. Next up, is a book that I had this in my PC. I got it graded early on in my CGC adventures, and I got a 9.6 on it. And I don't remember what I sold it for, but I remember saying, wow, I didn't spend hardly anything on that book, and I got a 9.6, and I sold it for a really good profit. And not necessarily a book that I'd necessarily want to keep in my PC, but again, this dealer had all kinds of different books, and they were all super high grade. And I remember the potential in this book, and I knew it probably wouldn't be as much as what I had before, but I'm willing to take a shot on a book like this and go ahead and do another one. It's John Carter, Warlord of Mars. Now, this right here is from May of 1977. 9.8 value. Again, I think it could hit that. I've seen it go down in the last few months anywhere from $100, and that was definitely an eBay auction, up to $215 to $275 for some fixed listings. Really excited about that. 9.6 is right now down to $80 to $90. It scares me a little bit in that case. It may have to be a 9.8 candidate, or pre-screen rather. So we'll see about that, but this may be the second John Carter book, number one, that I get graded over the last couple of years. All right, I'm going to put these down. We've got a couple of things left here. I had only gotten a few of these graded, but not these versions of this book. This right here, I never got this. This was probably my least favorite cover, but it's Spider-Man number one, the Todd McFarlane book from 1990. I love this book. I love the interior artwork. I didn't like this cover. I don't like this background on there. I just didn't like it. I love the silver version. I even like some of the other versions, but I didn't like the regular cover right there. But I've got copies of it. But I bought this because for $10, this looked super high grade. This is a book that crosses over a couple different things here, but mostly, if they ever do another Todd McFarlane signing, I may send this one in. This one right here, as a 9.8 blue label, only $76 to $85, not that big a deal, but signed by McFarlane, $435 down to $369. This is definitely a book that I would look to send in, pay for that signature, hopefully get that 9.8, and then do a resale on a book like this. It's very popular. That's probably two of the most popular Todd McFarlane books getting signed. I don't have evidence of that, but between this and Spawn number one, those are the two books that I always get signed by Todd McFarlane. But I didn't stop with the regular cover. I actually picked up, I'd never had this, the second print gold version. And this is a book that I've seen signed when I was doing my research. If he signs this in white, it really pops off of there. It looks fantastic. This right here, 9.8 blue label, $118 to about, it's about $118 to $120. 9.6s go down to just south of $100, but signed 9.8s on this book, $325 up to $355. A lot of value on this book as well. I would do the exact same thing. Now I actually had, in one of my videos from a couple years ago, I had sent into the Todd McFarlane signing, I sent in a silver version of that, and I got that back, and it was my one and only 9.9 that I've ever gotten from CGC, and unbelievable that was a signed version. I was going to hold on to it, but it was actually too valuable. I sold that book for well over $3,000 at that point. No regrets on that. And I've got somewhere in the collection, I've got a roll of that same exact silver book signed by Todd McFarlane, and I will hold on to that. I'll probably send it in for a verification from CGC JSA at some point, but I don't need a 9.8, or excuse me, a graded version necessarily on that. That was my experience actually meeting Todd McFarlane and getting him to sign that book. So I didn't have any regrets selling the one that I sent into the signing. All right, so enough about Todd McFarlane and the potential of these books. I've got one left, and this is actually the first book that I saw that just, wait a minute, the grade, the price, there's some potential, not a huge potential, but it is a great book, and the fantastic condition of this book. And it's been a while since I picked up a Spider-Woman number one, not Jessica Drew's first appearance, but her origin in this book. I always love this cover. It's a Joe Sennett cover right here. So you're not going to get signed. I don't have that ability anymore. But this book right here, May of 1978, Blue Label, potential $178 to $189, does drop down, and it has dropped down recently over the last year. 9.6 is all the way down to $75 to $80. I've owned a 9.6. It's perfectly good in my collection. I bought this with the potential of that 9.8. And when I said I wasn't going to get signed, well, yeah, you're not going to get Joe Sennett to sign it or any of the artists, but the writer, Marv Wolfman, is still around. And I said, well, I wonder what a Marv Wolfman signed book on this. And I had to go through Go Collect and find the exact listing. But I did find 9.8s with Marv Wolfman signing this book all the way up to $700. And I'm like, wow, that's pretty good. I didn't expect it to be that much of a recent sale. 9.6 is a lot of value still with Marv Wolfman signing the book. A single sign, that's just him, $185. So for what I paid for this book, I will have a lot of margin for improvement and for profit at some point on this book. All right, guys, that is it for the second dealer. Stay tuned for the third dealer, and we only got a couple of books left to go. All right, guys, we're down to the third dealer of the day. And again, I apologize for how long the video is going, but this was a fantastic haul. And as you guys know, I love talking about the stories behind the comics and the acquisition and what's so good about these books. So this dealer right here is TBC. They are actually called To Be Continued Comics. They are out of Crofton, Maryland. I think they've got 2 locations now, but the main place, the first one was down in Crofton, Maryland. And great guys right there. They've got great books. And I have bought a lot of great books over the years from them, including books right off of their Whatnot show as well. And they always have a good fan base when you go to the show. In fact, when I said I couldn't get to some dealers early on, they were going to be one of my first stops, but I couldn't even get to the table, and they had a very small setup, and there was no room. There's no way you could elbow your way in. You just had to wait for it. So I don't know what I missed, because it was probably a good hour to an hour and a half before I even got back to be able to talk to them. And I got to go through the bins, and they always have some really good books in there, sometimes better than you expect, sometimes not as good as you expect, but sometimes the prices will shock you how good it is, and then there's sometimes the prices are, wow, that seems really high. But the thing I will say is that they're always really good about correcting the price. Maybe that price, I literally sat there and watched him pull down an Avengers #4 and adjust that price down by over $600 because he said, wait a minute, that price was from so long ago. They repriced it on the spot. And I know there was a dealer that actually bought that book. He wasn't set up at this show, but he jumped on that, and it was a fantastic looking copy. It's probably easily a 7 to a 7.5, maybe even an 8.0 copy of that book. Now, I wasn't dropping that kind of cash, but I was definitely, like I normally do, look for books I can invest in. Don't spend a lot of money, but don't be afraid to spend a lot of money if you find that value in that book. I mean, I looked at their New Mutants 98. It was really good, but their price tag was way too high for me to even negotiate it down to where I felt like I was comfortable spending. But they had other books that sometimes a lot less, they cost a lot less, and you got some hidden value in there. And so you don't know what you're going to find. You could find some really expensive books that maybe you feel are overpriced, but then you find a lot of books that are still really underpriced. And that's kind of what happened in this show. So it does hit on a couple themes at TBC. And the first one, I found this about the second bin I was going through, and I had seen it recently, and I'm like, oh, I love that cover. I don't remember it exactly, but like, this is a book that I'm going to go get signed, and whether, I didn't care what the value would be, if you even get it graded, I didn't care. And it's Catwoman #72. And this has got this beautiful Adam Hughes cover of Zatanna. And I've actually got books from Adam Hughes signed from her run that he did covers for that I've gotten graded. And this right here, I think, predates that run on Zatanna. But what a great cover. It does have some value, not as much as I honestly thought. a Blue Label unsigned version, only about $80. But a 9.8 signed by Adam Hughes, not as much as I would have thought, but only $130. This is a book that I just want to have signed, and maybe at some point I get it graded. I don't know, but I don't care. This is a book I would love to have signed in my PC. So I felt pretty good, and I held onto that book as I went through the rest of the bins. And yeah, there were a few things in there. There was some interest, but nothing jumped out at me. But they did have some wall books. And again, I said I looked at the New Mutants. I felt like the price was too much. And I didn't even feel like negotiating at that point. And this was the last stop of the day. And I'd already spent a lot of money at the other two dealers. So I didn't want to drop another. I mean, I could have easily dropped to $300 to $400, but their price tag was a lot more. And I didn't think they would come down that much. And honestly, at that point, it's like, fine, I'm not. There's other things on the wall. They had a Spider-Man 238 that priced right, but the condition wasn't quite there. They had another book that was the same way. But they had one other book, and I looked at the price, and I'm going, that price seems underpriced. And a lot of times you don't want to tell the dealer, hey, why is this so low? Because you definitely want to still get a discount on whatever the price tag is. But when you tell the dealer, why is your price so low on that? I had to, because I felt like it was underpriced. And the condition to me looks really good. Let me show it to you. I've picked up another copy of Uncanny X-Men 129, the first appearance of Kitty Pryde and Emma Frost. And a big key probably the biggest key during that John Byrne run is this book right here. And this is a book that I have gotten signed. I think I ended up with a 9.4. I ended up selling that book. I think I still have another raw that I don't think will grade out quite as much. But I looked at this book. I took a look, and they had a $125 price tag on there. And I'm going, based on the prices on some of the other books, this is a book that I felt like was really highly priced. But I think it was recently priced by them. And what he said was, he said, based on the condition, there's nothing wrong. Like, there's not missing pages or anything like that. That he would tell me. They felt like it was going to grade, it could grade to a 7.75. And I'm going, and it's based on that price. And I'm looking at it, and I'm going, yeah, it needs some cleaning up along the spine. And it definitely needs a little bit of a press. I mean, I see some pressable creases along the back here. But honestly, I think this book has a lot of value. So I'm not going to give you a 9.8 based on what they felt like the book is. I don't think I could get a book, if it was a 7.0, I don't think I could get it up that high. But I don't think it's a 7.0 book. I think, okay, let's look at what would this book, if it was an 8.5, what would I go for? Well, an 8.5 is $138 to $158. Like, okay, fine. With pressing, I basically break even and get rid of the book. Signed, however, 8.5s. If you get Claremont to sign this book, 8.5 does fantastic. And it's up to $420. So that's a book, like, depending on what grade it really ends up being, would I want to keep it in the PC? Maybe. Or would I want to use it to sell? But this is one of those times when I'm getting a book signed to really increase the value on top of the grading, or to help the grading in this case. Well, let's take it up a notch. And again, I'm not going to go up to 9.8, but let's just go up a little bit, a couple dial notches up, and we'll go up to a 9.4. What would this book be? I think this book is easily a 9.4 or above with some proper work. 9.4's Blue Label does really good. $450 down to $320. Signed, actually about the same from what I was finding, $316 to $425. So again, some of these prices might be from auctions, not from buy it nows. So there's still a lot of value in this book, even at as a 9.4. So we'll see. The prices are all over the place on this book, on the sign, but just take this. It is a case of there's a lot of value in getting this sign to increase the value. And I think I got a gem here, and I think I got it at a really good price, because between the two books, I got a pretty good bundle price. So I paid for basically I paid for the one book, what it comes down to. All right, guys, so that wraps up all the 3 dealers that I ended up buying from. I will leave you contact information for the ones that I do have that information for down in the description. There were a lot of other great dealers there. In fact, there was the one dealer that I had bought previous from the last 2 shows. I've been buying some more Dave Stevens books, and I talked to him for a little bit, and I almost went back to that well again, but be quite honest, I had spent a lot of money at this point on everything that you saw today, so I didn't want to be spending more. So I ended up passing on that, but we talked about the books, and I told him I had sent in the last 2 Dave Stevens books to CGC, and I told him I'd let him know how they did. He was excited. Hopefully we get some 9/8 out of some of those books. So thank you for joining me today as we wrap up the second episode in a 2-part series devoted to the Clandestine Comic Book Show in Laurel, Maryland. I had a great time at the show, picked up a lot of great books. I definitely looked forward to your comments in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about the books I picked up. And if you haven't had a chance, again, to already watch the previous episode, definitely go back and watch that. You get to see the montage of the show floor, as well as the books that I picked up from the very first dealer as well. So guys, that is it. Thank you for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you here for the next episode. But until then, guys, remember, every comic has a story.